in this space of everything that's happening at the moment, I presume people know how to go to OpenAI and start interacting with ChatGPT, right? But I'm wondering for people, programmers and scientists and data scientists and ML people who maybe haven't had a lot of experience with it, how can they get started with playing around with large language models today?
Yeah, of course. There are kind of different levels of abstraction. It depends, I guess, how much code you're willing to write and how much time you have to put into understanding what's going on, going on behind the scene, I guess. Because there are also like different methods to interact with a language model. There are different kind of pipelines to train a language model if you have data. So I think like the main resource, if you want to understand a bit what's going on without like well too deep into the kind of entire difficulties that like I feel like machine learning can open, is still Hugging Face. Hugging Face is like this kind of course in which you can go through the fine-tuning of a supervised language model for example, classification tasks. That's gonna give you like a very good intro on how to actually have your own, maybe small, large language models on your own laptop doing things, and that could be already good enough to do many different tasks. It's very controllable. You can do whatever you want with it, and it usually run on consumer hardware most of the time. It might be slow, but at least it's enough to start playing with it. We're right now starting like to.
I'm just adding a link to, I mean, I presume a lot of people know about Hugging Face, but I've just included a link in the chat for those interested. And once again, if any questions come up, do feel free to ask them in the YouTube chat as well. Sorry, please go on, Fede.
Yeah, sure. And like there are right now with all this like huge development, there are kind of a lot of packages that wrap APIs for you that are coming out. For example, there is LangChain that is kind of an abstraction that you can use to kind of seamlessly, let me use the word talk with multiple language models without kind of like having to delve into different kind of setups, different kind of systems, building kind of like first layers of, I don't know, safety. So LangChain is another thing that I think it's like very interesting to look at, because it's not like a scientific revolution, but it's very useful. It's like empirically, and like it's a good engineering effort to make language models accessible to the broader audience. And finally, if you kind of want to maybe write some code that is mostly API, I think that like using Cohere's or like OpenAI APIs is still an effective way to deal with language models. You can prompt for questions, ask for classification. There is an entire field that is called prompt engineering that is kind of the art of asking questions to language models that is becoming more and more relevant. There are courses coming up that have been like advertised everywhere on most social media platform, and this is the direction of like talking directly with the model using, for example, APIs.
Great. And people can check out the OpenAI APIs. And I've just shared a link to Cohere and LangChain as well. Yuri Gordon has a great question. We're going to get to this type of thing later, actually, Yuri, but I do want to foreshadow this. Yuri's asking about security measures and tools to handle different risks. Oh, pardon me. I've got a bit of hay fever. I'm getting so excited. And yeah, Akil has an interesting question around integrating ChatGPT into IDEs and that being useful for programmers. He also says, is this a cause of fear in programmers that AI will take over? I'll maybe say a few words about that, because I do think talking about code assistance, you've mentioned Copilot, but in all honesty, man, like if I can get stuff like ChatGPT to generate templates and basic, control flow stuff and, skeletons, like I want to make sure, and all the business logic makes sense, and all the domain expertise that I need to inject into my software works. but I'm all for, you know, having a coding assistant helping me with the stuff, especially the code I don't enjoy writing. But anything business critical, of course, like I'll take a non-controversial analogy. If I'm building a bridge, I'm a structural engineer and I'm building a bridge and I need to figure out how thick to make a pylon to support a part of the bridge. And I need to make sure that it's, you know, it supports this part of the bridge. I'm not going to outsource the measurements of that to something like ChatGPT or a large language model. Maybe I'll get it to do the basic design and these types of things, but anything that would result in the bridge collapsing, I'm going to make sure that I figure out by hand, right? So anything that's super mission critical like that. So maybe you can speak about that in the software world briefly, Fede.
Yeah, I think like I wouldn't kind of give anything that is mission critical to ChatGPT to develop, or at least if I do, I would then like check it manually before ever deploying it. When I say that, like I think Copilot is useful is in a context of helping you writing code that takes long to write, but is not like highly complex or kind of like very sophisticated domain kind of code. I don't think Copilot can yet like do domain modeling for you. You still have to come up with like your own object-oriented infrastructure, and like you need to organize classes in a meaningful way that respect your kind of flow. What is very useful as when I develop is this kind of like very boring task that takes a lot of boilerplate code that everybody has written and it's already on GitHub, and that's how Copilot, and that's why Copilot is able like to efficiently write that directly for you. And yeah, definitely. Like I don't expect like software development to disappear soon as a thing. I expect us being much, or at least software developer to be much more productive with this kind of tools. And I expect people to work more on verifying the code that this kind of tool come up with.